Bobiverse Book 1. We Are Legion, We Are Bob Part 1. Robert Johansson aka Bob speaks to a cryonics salesman. Bob recently sold his software company and has a significant amount of money that he wants to spend. The cryonics people will decapitate him after death and keep his head frozen until future technology is able to bring him back. After signing the check, Bob hurries to the convention where he attends a panel that is speaking about exploring the universe and von Neumann probes. Afterwards he goes to meet his friends and they discuss Bob's obsession with exploring the universe. Bob returns to his hotel room and has a call with his family. Afterwards Bob wants to see more of the convention he is attending and so heads out. As he crosses the street, a speeding car swerves to miss other pedestrians and comes straight at Bob. Bob awakes but he can't feel his body. He begins to panic but it kind of goes away. Bob tries to open his eyes, but nothing happens again. Panic tries to take hold again but goes away. It's very disconcerting. When Bob is able to see, he is in a white room and the man who looks very much like Sigmund Freud is watching. He tries to talk to the man, but his voice comes out garbled. The man, whose name is Dr. Landers, starts explaining things. 117 years has passed since Bob died and he has been brought back as a replicant. In essence, Bob is a computer program copied from Robert Johansson's mind. Dr. Landers tells the religious right took over the United States and it is now a theocracy called faith. Bob learns that he is considered property by the government, and he wonders if he's just going to be put into a garbage truck to do menial labor. Most replicants go insane, and in order to ensure a replicant is viable they have 4 other replicants that are essentially his competition. Bob asks why he is not panicking, and Dr. Landers explains the endocrine control system which helps to keep applicants from going insane. Dr. Landers shuts Bob off and what seems like an instant later Bob is awakened again on a different day. Bob realizes that he now has some movement. There is a robotic arm on the table next to him and within seconds he has control of it and uses it to move around a little bit. This was the only goal of Dr. Landers's training for the day, so he turns Bob off again. Bob finds himself in another room where Dr. Landers has him try to use roamers, which are spider-like robots. Bob quickly learns to use the robots with the Guppy interface system. Bob is shut down and reactivated again. It annoys him, but Dr. Landers explains that it helps keep people from going insane. Unfortunately, one of Bob's competitors has already gone insane. The next time Bob wakes, Dr. Landers is accompanied by a minister from the Ministry of Truth. Bob is very careful as he answers the minister's questions because it's obvious the guy is trying to find out his position on faith. This turns out to be good because the minister has the power to shut Bob down. The next time Dr. Landers visits, Bob learns that the minister did in fact shut down one of the other replicants. Bob wants to know what his purpose will be, and to his surprise and excitement Dr. Landers tells him he is going to be a von Neumann probe. In a conversation with Dr. Landers, Bob learns that several other countries in the world are working on their own von Neumann probes. Their biggest competition is China and Brazil. A few others have programs but they're not as advanced. One day while Bob is working on learning more systems, an explosion rocks the building. Bob notices that the window is loose, and he manages to pop it out. He then helps stop the attackers with the roamers. Once it is over, the people seem very nervous that Bob is out of his containment. Bob asks Dr. Landers about it once he's back inside containment and learns that there is a tactical nuke in the basement in case Bob gets out of control, or if somebody in control of the project just decides they don't like what's going on. Bob manages to keep a roamer out of containment and searches the building for the nuke but doesn't find anything. He does manage to find a computer room where his matrix is being kept. He briefly considers destroying the other matrix that is his competition but quickly realizes how terrible that would be. One day Bob wakes up and he realizes many days have passed since he was last awake. He learns that another terrorist attack happened, and his matrix was destroyed. They had restored him from backup, but they only had one spare matrix, which means Bob essentially won the competition. Bob briefly has an existential crisis over what being destroyed and brought back from a backup means for his humanity, but recovers. Another attack happens and they moved Bob to his new heaven vessel. Dr. Landers tells Bob about the situation and encourages Bob to launch early if he feels the need. Bob learns that he is headed to Epsilon Eridani likely because Faith believes that everyone else will be headed to Alpha Centauri. Bob decides not to launch early just in case it makes a problem for Dr. Landers. Bob framejacks in order to learn more before leaving but is interrupted when a message from Dr. Landers says missiles. Bob sees the missiles incoming, and immediately launches. Bob barely manages to escape the missiles and as he accelerates away the various factions begin fighting one another. The rest of Dr. Landers' message includes a warning that there is a remote detonation device inside the heaven vessel. Bob immediately disables the communications and continues away from Earth. Bob decides to take a detour to see Saturn. On the way Bob finds explosives near his matrix and ejects the whole package into space since he hates explosives. As Bob passes Saturn he takes as much imagery as possible. It has always been his favorite planet. It takes 11 years to reach Epsilon Eridani, though subjective time it's going to only take 3 years. In order to stave off the boredom and the possible insanity, Bob keeps himself busy and creates a virtual reality for himself. By the end of the month Bob has a body and is relaxing in a lazy boy. He has turned the Guppy system into the likeness of Admiral Akbar from Star Wars in order to have some company. Bob creates a sandbox in order to test the messages he has received from Earth. As he suspects they are full of kill orders. It takes some time, but he eventually cleans up the messages so that they are not dangerous and eventually figures out how to remove all programming in himself that could control him, including the endocrine control system, though he doesn't immediately shut it off. He knows he's not quite ready to deal with his memories yet. Bob begins work on Heaven 2 plans, which will be much bigger and include things like weapons in the form of a rail gun. Bob goes through some of the messages that are now clean. He learns that the Brazilian probe is headed to the same star system as him. He also learns that Brazil and Faith have gone to war and unfortunately Dr. Landers dies in a bombing. Bob decides that there is no way to have peaceful talks with the Brazilian probe. He asks Guppy to watch Earth for signs of nuclear war, and within very little time Guppy reports evidence of nuclear war. After running out of things that need done, Bob finally deactivates the endocrine control system and mourns the loss of his life and family.